To the next statement, Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And with permission, I would like to make a statement about the 7th Contract for Difference Allocation Round and the results for offshore wind. 18 months ago, the government set out on our mission to make Britain a clean energy superpower. A mission rooted in a simple argument that if we want to take back control of our energy from the petrostates and dictators, if we want to bring down bills for good, and we want to create a new generation of secure, well-paid jobs, then the right choice is to get off the roller coaster of international fossil fuel markets, which caused the worst cost of living crisis in memory. Madam Deputy Speaker, for a year and a half, this mission has faced determined opposition from a well-funded band of doomsters and defeatists. Today, we publish the results of our latest offshore wind auction, and with it we prove those doubters and naysayers wrong. Let me set out the results to the House. On coming to office, we inherited the fiasco of the fifth allocation round, a failure of their making that trashed the crown jewels of our energy system with not a single offshore wind project secured. That is their legacy, indeed that is her legacy. Our last auction, AR6, got the industry on its feet again. Today it roars back stronger than ever. We've secured 8.4 gigawatts of offshore wind, enough to power the equivalent of over 12 million homes in this country, with winning fixed offshore wind projects in every part of Great Britain. Dogger Bank South off the coast of Yorkshire and Vanguard off the coast of East Anglia, two of the largest offshore wind farms in the world. Berwick Bank in the North Sea, the first new Scottish project since 2022. And Awal y Môr, the first Welsh project to win a contract in more than a decade. And on floating wind, the emerging technology of the future, successful projects in Wales and Scotland. The Erebus project in the Celtic Sea, and Pentland in Scotland, backed by pioneering investment from Great British Energy and the National Wealth Fund. Taken together, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a record-breaking amount of offshore wind capacity procured in a single auction. The most successful offshore wind auction in British history and the most successful ever to be carried out anywhere in Europe. That is what it means to deliver on the promise we made to the British people. Against the backdrop of global headwinds facing the industry, this is a huge vote of confidence in Britain's drive for energy sovereignty and abundance. And let me explain to the House why these results are so important for the country. First, they are a major step forward for our clean energy mission, as I've said. Alongside our work driving ahead on onshore wind, solar, batteries and nuclear, this puts us firmly on track to take back control of our energy and deliver clean power by 2030. We only have to look at events around the world, Madam Deputy Speaker, to see that we live in increasingly unstable and uncertain times. Fossil fuel shocks have caused half of the UK's recessions since 1970. Last year, wholesale gas prices spiked by 15% in a single week after global instability in the Middle East. And we must never forget the impact of Russia invading Ukraine, which saw family finances, business finances, and the public finances wrecked as a result of them leaving us exposed to fossil fuels. This exposure leaves us incredibly vulnerable as a country, and we haven't got a moment to waste in ending it. That is why our mission is so important. And these record-breaking results show our approach to building things again in this country is working. We are more secure today in our energy system than we were yesterday, thanks to these results. And we look forward to building on this momentum as we look ahead to AR8, which we're on track to open later this year. Second, on costs. These results show offshore wind is cheaper to build and operate than new gas. Today we publish updated estimates of the levelised cost of electricity, the standard industry metric, which includes the cost of building and operating new gas-fired power stations. The same metric that was published under the last Energy Secretary. These estimates show that the cost of building and operating a new gas-fired power station is £147 per megawatt hour. By contrast, I can inform the House that the average price for fixed offshore wind in today's auction was £90.91 per megawatt hour. In other words, 40% cheaper than the cost of building and operating new gas. And don't take my word for it. This is what the head of Energy UK, which represents gas, nuclear and renewables, said of renewables this morning, and I quote, we need to invest in new power generation, and this is the cheapest form. Madam Deputy Speaker, I know some people want to pull the wool over our eyes on this, but they can only do so by comparing the cost of building and operating new renewables with the cost of operating but not building new gas. And here is the reality. Faced with years of underinvestment in our energy system under the previous government, and power demand set to increase by at least 50% by 2035 and more than double by 2050, there is no alternative to building new energy infrastructure in this country. Now, we can choose to stop building renewables and just build new gas plants, as they want to do, but it is clear that offshore wind remains significantly cheaper to build and operate. And credible independent research confirms that the renewables we've already built are bearing down on wholesale electricity costs, having reduced wholesale prices by a quarter in 2024. Our mission is right. Clean power is the route to bringing down energy bills for good. Third, today's auction cements the offshore wind industry's position as a jobs and growth engine for Britain at the heart of our industrial strategy. These projects will unlock £22 billion in private investment and support at least 7,000 good jobs across the country, from the Scottish Highlands to the Suffolk coast. Now, members across this House know that so many people in our country ask the question of where the good jobs of the future are going to come from for themselves and their children. Clean energy is central to that answer. The previous government failed to act to ensure offshore wind generated jobs and supply chains in this country. By contrast, we will use every tool at our disposal to ensure turbines, foundations and cables are made and built in Britain, creating good, well-paid jobs with strong trade unions. That is why this auction, for the first time, included a clean industry bonus to reward investment in ports and factories in the areas that need it most. I can inform the House that in this auction, the industry has responded with ambition. The clean industry bonus will crowd in billions of pounds of private investment and support thousands of jobs in supply chains across the country. And we look forward to setting out the full results in due course as we drive forward on the 100,000 offshore wind jobs our mission will help support by 2030. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me close by saying that Britain faces a choice over the coming years. We can seize the opportunities of clean homegrown energy to cut bills and create jobs, or we can double down on our exposure to fossil fuels. In calling for us to cancel this auction, our opponents made their choice, setting their face against cheaper, cleaner, homegrown power, against 7,000 jobs supported today and thousands more to come, against taking back control of our energy sovereignty, and against action on the climate crisis to protect our children and grandchildren. Madam Deputy Speaker, this government has made our choice for energy security, lower bills, good jobs and climate, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for advance sight of his statement. What the Secretary of State has done today is given a massive boost to the profits of multi-million-pound energy companies, but it will be paid for consumers through their bills. So what do the prices show us? First, wind power is not getting cheaper as promised. These are the highest prices that we've seen in a decade. Today's strike prices in a like-for-like comparison are much higher than last year. If we use the Secretary of State's own figures on the worth of the contract extension that he put forward to 20 years, they are 24% more expensive than last year. That's an enormous increase year on year, 24%. More expensive, much higher than inflation. So can he explain why building a wind farm has suddenly got so much more expensive? Well, I can. It's because the Secretary of State, by setting himself completely unrealistic targets, he advertised to multi-million-pound wind developers that he would be buying whatever they were selling, no matter the cost. He flexed all the rules, he extended their contracts. In fact, he gave the wind developers everything they wanted, and this is how they repaid him. The most expensive prices for wind power that we've seen in a decade. And he wants us to celebrate the fact that he bought a bumper round, the biggest in history, in his own words. Now let's take his key argument on levelised cost of electricity. If he had looked at or replied to any of the letters I had sent him, he would know that I did not agree with using an LCOE to compare wind power and gas power. He will know I started... He might want to listen to this because he might learn something. He will know I started a full systems cost, which he cancelled, even though I urged him to continue it. That's because the full cost of these contracts to the consumer are £95 in today's money, plus inflation, plus the extra costs that come with wind, turning them off when it's too windy, having a backup gas plant when it's not windy enough, and connecting them to the grid. So he's underplayed the true cost of wind on people's bills. And by the way, that's not just me saying how we should look at it. This is what wind developers themselves say that they should look at it. It's how Sir Dieter Hellman, senior economists, say we should look at it. We should look at the full system's costs. Now let me turn to gas. When he talks about the comparison with a new gas power plant, he is willfully ignoring the fact that he needs to build new gas plants anyway. Yes. What does the Secretary of State think will power the country on wintry days when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow? Even his own plans acknowledge it's gas power. In his plans, he will build the same amount of gas plants anyway. He'll just run them 4% of the time. Would anyone here buy a house they use 4% of the time? Well, I guess out of all of us, the Secretary of State probably would, but here's the problem. He's having to build more and more capacity, lots of which will sit idle most of the time. That means higher costs for a less productive energy system. These are all costs the Secretary of State is choosing to ignore. But even if we use the figures he's quoting today, which underplay the cost of wind, even in his own figures, the truth is here. If you take out the carbon tax that he's choosing to impose, the cost of a gas power plant running fully is much cheaper, roughly a third cheaper, than offshore wind. It's here in black and white, page 33, if members would like to check. He's hoping that members on the benches opposite won't read what he's published today, but I hope they do, because it should be facts, not ideology, that drives the decisions we make for our energy system. People out there are at breaking point. They get up every day, they go to work, and everything they earn is being eaten up by Labour's taxes and their bills. He tried to tell me last time we were at this dispatch box that people's energy bills are going down, not up. Nobody out there believes him. Energy bills have gone up 5 times under him because of his policies, and now he is celebrating this botched wind auction, which has seen him sign up to the highest prices of wind power for a decade, prices which are close to 20% higher than the cost of electricity. The question is, how on earth can he bring bills down from here with these higher prices? That is what people were promised. This will be the PFI of the energy system long after he's gone from this place. And I warned the Secretary of State, that by setting himself completely unrealistic targets, the wind developers would have him over a barrel. And that is what has happened here. He talks about fossil fuel spikes, but he doesn't talk about the ongoing deindustrialisation of this country because of uncompetitive electricity prices, prices which he is locking us into for 2 decades. So I have 3 simple questions for him. Will he finally publish a full systems cost of Clean Power 2030? Will he confirm that he will still need to build gas power plants for dispatchable power? Or if that's not his policy, what is going to keep the lights on when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine? And does he have a forecast for the constraint payments, how much he will expect to pay those wind developers to turn off when it is too windy?
Secretary of State.
That was a lot. As they say. Look, first of all, let me deal with her, what she said point by point. First of all, we're going to take no lectures from her on energy bills. She presided over the worst cost of living crisis in history. And not once, Madam Deputy Speaker, have we heard a word of apology. And I'll tell her, it's this government that is taking £150 of costs off bills. And how are we doing it? Because we're raising taxes on the wealthy. And she opposes every one of the measures that we are taking. Second, I have to say to her, I know it's painful for her, but I'm using the same metric that she endorsed in November 2023. She was there as the Energy Secretary. She published the document, and on that metric, she knows the truth that it says, which is that the offshore renewables today are 40% cheaper to build and operate than new gas. And however much she tries to struggle or flail around, that is the fact. So they are the facts, I'm afraid. And she asked about carbon pricing. By the way, it's very interesting. Even when you take off carbon pricing, gas is still more expensive on the figures we published today. Her sums simply don't add up. Now then she asks, and this is really rich. She asks about constraint payments. Well, What I've got to say, why do we have constraint payments? I am answering the question. Why have we got constraint payments? Because they failed to build the grid when she was a Secretary of State. And get this, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now she comes along, complains about constraint payments, and opposes every piece of energy infrastructure that we try and build to actually bring down the constraint payments. I mean, it is extraordinary. But here's her big problem, Madam Deputy Speaker. Here's her big problem, is that she is making a massive gamble. And it's a gamble on fossil fuels. A gamble on fossil fuels, exactly what they did when they were in office. And we know where that led. The worst cost of living crisis in memory, leaving us at the mercy of petrostates and dictators, and leaving the British people to pay the price. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'll end up by saying this. We were elected with a historic mandate to end their record of failure, and that's what we're doing. We're ending the sellout of our energy security. We're cutting bills. We're creating hundreds of thousands of clean energy jobs. We're protecting future generations. Let me sum it up. She failed. We're delivering.
Before I call the first member, may I just remind members that we also have important debate on Ukraine later on this afternoon. So we will be looking to finish this statement around 4 o'clock, which leaves us around 30 minutes. So please keep questions and answers short. Bill Esterson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Energy Secretary deserves enormous congratulations for moving from the botched auction round 5, to use the Honourable Lady's words, to the record success of auction round 7. The record success where the strike price will see no increase on consumer bills. Indeed, Aurora say it is likely to see a reduction in bills, and it's 40% cheaper, as he set out in great detail how this will be cheaper than gas. So does he agree that this demonstrates once and for all that renewable energy is good for bills?
My honourable friend is absolutely right, and I do say to him and to others that people can have incredibly short memories in this House, particularly the opposition. Here we are. We're only 5 years on from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We know what this... And the Honourable Lady says from a sedentary position, gas is falling. But she's just taking a gamble. At the time of the greatest geopolitical instability in a generation, she is gambling on stability. I'm not going to make that gamble. We are going to have homegrown, clean power, and we're going to take back control.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Edward Morello.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to start by welcoming the results of the AR7 allocation. This is about protecting working families from volatile fossil fuel prices set by foreign powers who have repeatedly used oil and gas as a geopolitical weapon. And relying on Trump's America or Putin's Russia to keep the lights on puts us all at risk. Renewable energy is also the cheapest form of energy. And it is only through renewable energy that we can deliver permanently low and secure energy prices and help with the cost of living crisis, not just today, but for the long term. While procuring 8.4 gigawatt of offshore wind puts the country on track for the government's clean power target, 2030 target, research from Renewable Energy UK does show that this is the minimum needed, leaving very little room for delays.
They're a very independent source.
They are a source nonetheless. But it does place even greater importance on AR8. So I'm hoping the government will commit to its timetable to open AR8 by the summer and to announce the results by the end of the year. Meanwhile, there is still work to be done to bring down bills for working families and businesses, which is why I urge the Secretary of State to look at Liberal Democrat proposals to phase out the outdated renewable energy certificate scheme and replace it fully with a contract for difference scheme. We all must also be honest about the impact of Brexit on energy bills. Well, we can't get through it without mentioning it. So will the government commit to accelerating negotiations to re-engage with the EU's internal energy market to ensure access to cheap electricity when we need a guarantee energy source and export market for when we overproduce? And despite the noise from my science-denying fossil fuel lobbyists on the right and the Putin apologists behind us, This is good for Great Britain. This is the right decision for consumers, and it promises a better and cleaner future.
Good lines. Let me deal with these questions briefly, Madam Deputy Speaker, following your injunction. One, AR8 is important and sticking to the timetable. Absolutely, we want to do that. He's right, we're rebuilding confidence in the industry. Secondly, we continue to look at proposals from him and others on doing everything we can to cut the cost of electricity. He's right about that. And I think his broader point is right, which is this is about how we make the right long-term decisions for the country, and I'm grateful for his support.
Melanie on.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I mean, I would say I'm old enough to remember when Conservative Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, said that he wanted Grimsby to be the Riyadh of offshore wind. And I also remember the opposition secretary attending offshore wind conferences, championing the sector. So where she stands now is in direct opposition to where she was just a few years ago. And I, for one, am pleased to see the East Coast offshore wind industry strengthened through today's announcement, which will help to deliver energy independence for the UK, secure existing jobs in the sector, of which there are 12,000 clean energy-related jobs in Lincolnshire. I would like to ask, though, the Secretary of State how he sees today's announcement benefiting growth in the supply chain and delivering new industrial investment in places like Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes.
Well, my old friend is right. Bandwagon jumping is basically their policy, and they've jumped on the anti-net zero bandwagon on her really important, serious points about the future. And indeed, she's a brilliant champion for this industry and for her area. I think there are huge opportunities for Grimsby as a result of this. She will know that RWE were particularly successful in this auction, and we look forward to working with her and with them to make sure that we really deliver for her constituents.
Sir Christopher Chope.
Speaker, can I ask the Secretary of State how the figures he's just announced today are compatible with the announcement by the Climate Change Committee's 7th carbon budget last year, which said that the cost of offshore wind per megawatt hour at 2023 prices in 2035 would be £37.80 per megawatt hour. He's just announced £90.91 per megawatt hour. How can that be a bargain basement price? Isn't this really a rip-off of the consumer who's now going to be faced with extortionate energy prices for at least 20 further years?
No, I don't agree with him. What I would say to the honourable gentleman is he should look in all seriousness at the need to build new energy generation in this country. Look, we're going to have 50% rise in electricity demand by 2035, and you've got to build something. Now, if he wants to build a whole fleet of new gas-fired power stations, he can decide to do that. But the figures we published today show the costs of that, and they're more expensive to build and operate than the offshore wind we announced today.
Downie.
I welcome the statement from the Secretary of State, in particular delivering for Scotland once again with more renewable energy investment. The Secretary of State rightly also talked about the actions and the impact of the actions of Vladimir Putin in Ukraine and why that has had a direct impact on ordinary people here, something we must make sure we protect now and in the future. We must protect both these new projects and existing infrastructure from those outside attacks. Can I ask him to say a little bit more about how he's ensuring as much of the technology in these excellent projects will be made in the UK, how he will protect them from foreign actors, as well as how he's protecting existing infrastructure?
20 minutes left. Questions need to be shorter, answers just as short.
That's why the Clean Industry Bonus is so important, and we'll be announcing more about this tomorrow, Madam Deputy Speaker, because this is going to lever in massive amounts of private investment, including in supply chains.
Deputy Speaker, the Secretary of State mentioned the rollercoaster of prices, and yes, we obviously understand that gas prices go up and down, but they come down. We're now stuck at the top of the rollercoaster he's talked about for 20 years. How is that going to reduce bills?
I just disagree with her, Madam Deputy Speaker. She is making a massive gamble on the future. She is gambling that gas prices will fall. We are giving this country assurance that we can have clean, homegrown power and we can lower bills for good.
Billington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I congratulate my friend in the Secretary of State for structuring the auction to drive down the strike price and reduce consumer energy bills. Again, it is worthwhile reiterating that this means that renewable energy will be 40% cheaper than gas. But it's also important about creating jobs, specifically in coastal industries. Could he elaborate a little bit more on the clean industry bonus, specifically about how we might be able to support supply chain jobs in our coastal communities?
Well, my honourable friend speaks very well on these issues, and I think her question is absolutely right. The great thing about the clean industry bonus is for the first time we are rewarding manufacturers for investing in Britain. It's going to leverage in multiple amounts more private investment compared to public investment, and I believe it can be of massive benefit to our coastal communities.
Speaker, I welcome this statement, but it's important my constituents can feel the effect in their pocket. Does the Secretary of State accept that the biggest reason people aren't benefiting from cheap renewables is that electricity prices are still set by gas most of the time? And what steps is he taking to break that link beyond simply building more renewables?
Yes, this is an incredibly important point, and the great thing about Clean Power 2030 is it will mean gas sets the price much less of the time, and with contracts for difference, the reduction in prices feeds through to bills.
Mike Reader.
This is a fantastic announcement for the UK, and it's fantastic also to hear that you're preparing, the Secretary of State is already preparing for AR8. But could you assure the House that it's going to be as much focus from his department on mid and long-term storage that we need to support all this growth in generation?
I think my honourable friend makes a really important point, for example, about battery storage and long-duration storage, and that is something that we are working on as a department, that Ofgem is working on, because this is what is the sort of crucial other part of the jigsaw.
Ashley Fox.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Secretary of State is going to pay a floating wind farm £216 per megawatt hour. Can you explain how that will lower fuel prices for my constituents?
This is about an innovative technology, and the experience we had with and he's right, it is expensive at the moment, but the experience we had with offshore wind and onshore wind and solar was that by investing in it at the front end, we then lowered the price through deployment, and that is what meant it's a cheaper technology. So yes, we are supporting floating wind, and we do think it's the right thing to do, but it is a crucial next frontier when it comes to the offshore wind industry.
Landlocked MP, offshore wind matters greatly to me. As the largest employer in my constituency, GE Vernova produces critical components for this sector. Could the Secretary of State assure me that any and all future manufacturing requirements for this sector will recognise those companies who are investing in the UK, building skills, providing good jobs? And could I again ask him to join me at Stafford as our HVDC facility?
Well, I have a long-standing promise, which I will fulfil, to do everyone seems to know about it, to visit my honourable friend's constituency and what GE Vernova is doing. And I think my honourable friend makes a really important point, which is about making sure that when it comes to procurement, which I know that GE Vernova have a particular interest in, that we procure as much as possible from the UK. And that is something that my department is working on, not just through the clean industry bonus, but many other things we're doing.
While the news on Berwick Bank and Pentland is hugely welcome, it risks masking serious jeopardy for Scotland's offshore wind sector. There's great worry that today's news represents a longer-term shift in the renewables industry from north to south due to the current unfair and disproportionate regime of transmission charges. If Scotland's offshore wind sector is to have a future, we need to see reform of transmission charges before auction round 8, will we?
Even by the standards of the sort of miserablest UK all-comers record SNP, that takes some beating. I think he gets the award, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is a great news story for Scotland, not just Berwick Bank, but in terms of floating wind, and we want to carry on with that progress in ARA.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a fantastic announcement for Mid and South Pembrokeshire as it enables Wales's first floating offshore wind farm. Can I ask the Secretary of State how he will work with developers to maximise their use of local supply chains so that communities like mine can see the real benefits in terms of jobs and local economic growth?
Can I first congratulate my honourable friend, because he has been an absolutely brilliant champion of this industry, and I am so glad about today's announcement. And he is absolutely right. And I think I do want developers and all of the businesses involved to hear his message and his question loud and clear, which is we want to see this development built in Britain. And it is incredibly important that we work with them, and we will, to make sure that happens.
Tice.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, the Secretary of State has inadvertently misled the House. I have gas-fired power plant developers willing to build and operate at last year's price of £79 per megawatt hour. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, will the Secretary of State admit that with inflation, the current bids today are some 25% higher than that £79, and by the time they're actually built, almost 50% higher than £79 per megawatt hour?
With the greatest of respect, I trust our analysts in my department more than I do the honourable gentleman when it comes to arithmetic. And I've got to say to him, as somebody who I think has had an interest in the past in solar panels and all kinds of things, solar panels on roofs, so it's all right for him, but just not for anyone else. That tells us a lot.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As co-chair of the Celtic Sea Floating Offshore Wind APPG, I welcome the test and demo model, CFD, in the Celtic Sea. It will open the Celtic Sea up to investment. There are other test and demo models in the Celtic Sea. Could I ask the Secretary of State about the role of GB Energy to kick-start these test and demo models, as well as supply chains?
Hear, hear.
My honourable friend makes a really, really important point, and GB Energy has invested in the Pentland project in Scotland. Obviously, they are commercially independent, operationally independent from us, so they make their own decisions. But I think what it shows is that combined with the CFD, GB Energy can play a nurturing role for this technology, and that is incredibly important. It's what they've done in other countries for a long time, and it's now starting to happen here.
Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The price that this has been fixed at today is higher than what gas is with the reduction of carbon tax, or at the average of all of gas of last year. South Shropshire residents' energy bills are going up since the Minister has been Secretary of State. When can he promise that energy bills are going to come down for my constituents?
Well, we're going to be taking £150 off bills in April. But let me refer him to a really important report, Madam Deputy Speaker, if you just allow me, done by the ECIU, the Climate Intelligence Unit, Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit. Because what they show, you see, is that by having renewables on the system, we don't pay for expensive gas, much higher than the average wholesale price. And by not procuring that expensive gas, they believe we've brought down the wholesale price by at least £25 per megawatt hour. It's a really important report. You should read it.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, I very much congratulate my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, in securing this huge offshore wind investment, which will bring good jobs and opportunities for local businesses to South West Wales, as well as bringing down bills and increasing energy security. But will the Secretary of State liaise with appropriate colleagues to ensure the necessary investment in the port of Port Talbot? And can you give us some sort of indication of the construction time in the Celtic Sea and the proposed delivery time of electricity to the grid?
I can assure my honourable friend, who's a fantastic champion on these issues, that we are very much engaged with Port Talbot and the port on this issue in ABP, because it is incredibly important that we make those investments in the port, and she should sort of watch this space on those issues.
Carla Denyer.
Deputy Speaker, as a former offshore wind engineer, I am delighted that the government has secured record offshore wind capacity. Genuinely well done. But what's even cheaper than renewable energy is the energy you don't have to use because your home is more energy efficient. So the government scrapping an energy efficiency programme last year without announcing what it would be replaced by was less welcome. So could the Secretary of State assure my constituents that when the long-delayed Warm Homes Plan does come out, it will make sure that everyone can have a comfortable, warm, energy-efficient, affordable home?
Well, I'm grateful for her tone, and I'll return the compliment. Thank you for the kind word. I thank her for the kind words about this auction round. And she is absolutely right about the importance of our Warm Homes Plan and investing in energy efficiency. It will be coming very soon, and that's what it will do.
Madam Deputy Speaker, very much welcome this news for those of us who believe in a swift transition away from fossil fuels. Can the Secretary of State confirm that coming out of this auction round, supply chain jobs, including those in places like Hale and Falmouth in Cornwall, will remain at the top of the government's agenda?
Yes, and my honourable friend who speaks so well on these issues is absolutely right about this. There's huge opportunities for Cornwall in this area of offshore wind. And look, one of the things that I've been doing in my department is transforming it from simply an energy policy department to an energy policy and industrial policy department, because, Madam Deputy Speaker, this government believes in industrial policy.
Blake Stevenson.
Speaker. Can the Secretary of State give a clear assurance that not a single offshore wind project procured in this round will be built using technology made by Chinese slaves?
We have certainly not going to be doing that, Madam Deputy Speaker. We want as much as possible of this to be built in Britain.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I strongly welcome today's statement from my right honourable friend. The Port of Leith and Edinburgh North and Leith constituency is well placed to support logistics and manufacturing for Berwick Bank, which has been successful today. Will my right honourable friend meet with me to secure every job possible from this investment today?
I look forward to having conversations absolutely with my honourable friend. I think there's huge opportunities for Scotland here, and we intend as a government to maximise them, Madam Deputy Speaker.
And of course, we welcome the new offshore wind projects in Wales and all the anticipated jobs. But if only we could guarantee that profits would stay in our communities and that the use of local supply chains was contractually hardwired. So will his government ensure that time is secured for a debate on the Crown Estate Bill so we can discuss how the people of Wales get their fair share of offshore wind profits?
I think securing time in the House is way above my pay grade, Madam Deputy Speaker. But look, let me just say more generally to the Honourable, I promise you it is, let me say more generally to the Honourable Lady, I agree with her, which is, we are looking at the Procurement Act and the way the Procurement Act works. I think making sure that we procure as much of this as we can in the UK is incredibly important, and it's something that's taken seriously right across government.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I congratulate my right honourable friend for securing this, and it's real chutzpah from the opposition, who seem to have forgotten it was them that put the ban on onshore wind. So we need to remember who is in favour of tackling green energy and bringing bills down. But the other side of this, of course, is getting this electricity to constituencies like mine. How is progress on upgrading the grid, and what timelines has he got to make sure that this gets to the people who need it?
I agree with my honourable friend, Madam Deputy Speaker, because the opposition, I'm old enough to remember Boris Johnson, and Boris Johnson used to trumpet the potential of this, the future. He used to talk about it as the future, how it was going to build future jobs. They've abandoned all that. I mean, they're the sort of miserable pessimists about our country. Now, as for my honourable friend's question, I think she's absolutely right about this. And on the grid, we shall welcome this. The NESO have undertaken the biggest overhaul of the grid we've seen in a long time, reordering the queue to make sure we procure the power we need and that it is in the right places, and also that the queue is reordered so we actually give priority to the projects we need.
Deputy Speaker, today's announcement of a record-breaking auction securing over 8 gigawatts of wind power, enough electricity to power over 12 million homes, is clear evidence of this Labour government delivering on our clean power mission. That will help my constituents have lower bills in the future. But does the Secretary of State agree with me that this is good for jobs, it's good for growth and good for energy security?
My honourable friend is absolutely right about this, and I do think this point about energy security is absolutely crucial, Madam Deputy Speaker, but because we live in an uncertain world, we need our own homegrown clean energy, and this is what we're doing.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Energy Secretary talked about the clean industry bonus and supply chain opportunities. What commitment will he make that for every tower and turbine that goes up, it is British steel that is being used and Teesside jobs that are being created?
My honourable friend who I've discussed this with is absolutely right about this. We want to do everything we can to make sure that we use steel from Britain as part of this process. And look, part of this is about what you legislate for, and part of it is about the conversations you have with the developers to make sure that they do that. I'm setting a very, very clear expectation on this, and I expect developers to do everything they can to meet it.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I warmly welcome not just one but 2 offshore wind projects in Wales, billions of pounds in investment and thousands of new jobs, putting Wales firmly on the map as a clean energy producer. We're delighted to see Owler in North Wales, and for Clwyd North the benefits are clear. Skilled, well-paid local jobs and a huge boost for local supply chains. Along with new nuclear at Wilver, North Wales is finally getting the clean energy investment it deserves under this Labour government. So can I thank the Secretary of State for this investment in North Wales, and will he join me in meeting apprentices at Coleg Llandrillo already training for these jobs of the future?
Well, I would really like to do that, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Prime Minister and I and the Chancellor and indeed the First Minister of Wales had a fantastic visit to North Wales when we announced our SMRs there, and just the excitement among the people at the college, the students at the college, about the future that we are building was so palpable to see. And I do have to say, that is the difference between this side and that side. You know, we are embracing that future. We are building that future for those young people. They are, frankly, selling those young people down the river.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I welcome the investment for Norfolk's Vanguard project, which will play an enormous role, being awarded over a third of total capacity under these contracts. The Secretary of State has spoken about the benefits for jobs. Can he speak specifically about how we will ensure young people at school now and colleges will benefit with the apprenticeships and training in these industries?
My honourable friend makes a really important point, and we're going to be setting up 5 technical excellence colleges in clean energy, and they are incredibly important to help train young people for this clean energy future. There are a huge number of opportunities out there. I think part of it is about the training, part of it is about young people getting to know about these opportunities. I was at an amazing jobs fair in the North East, organised by Kim McGuinness, the Mayor of the North East, which was actually bringing together some of the developers with some of the young people, and the excitement among those young people about this future was so palpable, Madam Deputy Speaker. We need to do more of that.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to congratulate my honourable friend for proving that contracts for difference for offshore wind really do work. I'm particularly pleased to hear how much floating wind is in this contract. I know that my honourable friend is always looking to the future, so maybe he can update the House on what his department's doing, looking at emerging offshore technologies like offshore thermal, offshore wave and offshore tidal.
Those are incredibly important technologies, and we need to do more to help bring the costs down of those. Tidal will be in the part of the next pot, the next auction pot, but we're continuing to look at those issues about how we can deploy more of them in our country.
Murphy. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I congratulate the Secretary of State and his team on today's announcement, not least because it draws such a stark contrast. Whereas he has announced the largest ever offshore wind auction in history, one of his predecessors came to this House to announce the largest ever energy subsidy bill money from the government to households in history. That was the words from the then government's press release. £40 billion. That was necessary, but it was as a result of their failure to secure our energy supply, which cost our households thousands and the taxpayers billions. Can he confirm that this announcement will both secure our energy future, but also ensure such a catastrophic failure can never happen again?
Your friend speaks so well on these issues, and he's so right. This is about energy sovereignty. This is about our security as a country, and that's why it's so regrettable, because when they were in government, at least under Boris Johnson, the government seemed to understand this, that this is about it is, of course, it's about the climate crisis, and of course it's about good jobs, and it is indeed about lower bills, but it is about security. And in an uncertain, dangerous world, it is about security. They are, frankly, surrendering our security, and it is incredibly dangerous what they're proposing.
Alistair Strathern.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Climate Secretary, the Energy Secretary, for the leadership he's shown in this record-breaking step forward for renewable power, which I think underlines our commitment to delivering the clean, secure energy our country is crying out for. It's important to note the scale of energy secured as part of this, at 40% lower than new gas, was only possible because of reforms to the auction market design. We didn't tolerate the mechanisms that had failed under the last government. We innovated to deliver better value. But can I ask the Energy Secretary to make sure we do not rest on our laurels and continue to innovate in auction design to make sure we're getting the best possible value for money and the biggest possible capacity outcomes from future auctions too?
My honourable friend speaks very knowledgeably on these issues, and he's absolutely right. We actually changed the auction design not just to be able to see the so-called bid stack, which they couldn't under the previous regime, but also to allow more projects in to increase the competitive tension to get a better deal for the bill payer and indeed the taxpayer. He's absolutely right. We should keep innovating both for fixed technology and other technologies in order to maximise value for money and indeed deployment.
I hope it's been worth the wait, Dr. Jewinson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Look, affordability is the biggest issue facing our country. Climate change is the biggest issue facing our planet. That's why today's announcement is such good news. Wind power, 40% cheaper than natural gas. Now, bizarrely, Reform called this lunacy. Now, the Shadow Minister used to agree with us and she used to support the Climate Change Act, but now, of course, she agrees with Reform. So does the Minister believe that the Shadow Minister may be planning to join the best and the brightest of her former colleagues and become defector number 21?
I will. It was worth waiting for. I will let. I will let the right honourable lady speculate on her own future and whether she's going to join another political party. But I do think it's sad. In all seriousness, I do think it's sad, Madam Deputy Speaker, because the truth is that we used to pride ourselves as a country on competing to succeed when it came to building our clean energy future between political parties. And I think it is deeply regrettable. There are many sensible voices on the Conservative side who shake their heads when I talk to them about the direction that the party has taken. Fundamentally, my honourable friend is right, which is that the affordability, this is central to tackling the affordability crisis, central to tackling the climate crisis in our country, and central to giving us energy security.
Well, we got through that in 18 minutes, instead of much faster than we hoped. So well done to everybody. A point.